Hi, IBIS friends and families. My name is Kate. I'm excited to tell you about a paper that we're working on publishing based on interviews with parents of children in IBIS. So the goal of this project was to understand how parents think about predictive testing for autism in the first year of life. Importantly, this type of testing does not exist yet, but IBIS and other research teams around the country are working to develop these technologies, adapting things like MRI, EEG, and eye tracking to enable prediction of autism in infants aged 6 to 12 months, so in the first year of life. Anticipating this new technology, we wanted to understand the attitudes of IBIS parents who had at least one older child with autism, as well as a group of parents recruited outside of IBIS who had infants in the same age range but had no additional children with autism. So we published our first paper from this work last year, and it's shown here. We found that almost all parents, both of those with and without prior autism experience, were interested in getting this kind of predictive testing for their infants if they had the opportunity. And the primary reason that parents told us they would seek out such testing was so that they could access early intervention for their infants as soon as possible. So this finding led us to the current paper, which takes a deeper dive into the question of what types of early intervention services and supports would parents look for if they learned that their infant was likely to develop autism. So I'm going to show you the two main findings from the paper. So in orange here on this graph, you can see the proportion of IBIS parents, so parents who had prior autism experience, and in green, you can see the proportions of parents with no prior autism experience. So main take home here is you can see from this graph that there's a lot more orange than green. This shows that IBIS parents, unsurprisingly, were a lot more specific about the types of therapies and supports they would seek, since they already know a lot about the autism services landscape from their experience with their older child or children. This second graph shows the sources of information or additional support that parents would seek. And here you see a lot more green than orange in the first four categories in particular. So this shows that parents without autism experience say that they would go to their pediatrician for help finding services, or they would start Googling. A smaller proportion would seek out parent support groups or see a medical specialist. In contrast, for that final category, we saw that about a third of IBIS parents and no parents who didn't have autism experience would start the process of enrolling in disability benefits and changing their insurance right away if they learned that their infant was likely to develop autism. So our take-home points from this study are, first, the results are not surprising. We know that parents who have already had experience with an older autistic child or children have a lot of experience and knowledge to draw from, and they'd be able to swing into action really quickly to set up supports for their infant if told that they were likely to develop autism too. But there do remain some important questions about what this path, even for experienced autism parents, would look like. For example, a lot of IBIS parents told us that they would initiate the process of getting disability benefits for their infant, but would they qualify for such benefits based on an MRI or an EEG study that predicted a future autism diagnosis? Or might they need to wait until their infant was 2 or 3 years old to get a full diagnostic assessment and an official diagnosis before they could qualify for such benefits? So that's an open question at the moment. We don't know the answer to that yet. For the parents without autism experience, we saw that many of them would talk to their pediatrician or hop online for help with finding services for their infants. And the challenge here is that we know most pediatricians are not experts in autism. Some studies with pediatricians have reported that many feel unprepared for helping families navigate what they call the black box of autism care. In addition, we know that information about autism that's found online is often wrong. One study of TikTok videos with the hashtag autism label found that 27% of these videos contained accurate information. So only a quarter of them were accurate, whereas the remaining 3/4 were either inaccurate or overgeneral. So our conclusions from this paper, therefore, are that when and if researchers are able to successfully develop tools that can be used to predict autism in the first year of life, there's a responsibility to also provide families with accurate information about the limits of this prediction, which might not work in the same way as an official diagnosis to access services and insurance or disability benefits. And second, research teams have a responsibility to help connect families who learn that their infant is likely to develop autism with resources that they can begin to use immediately. This might be things like connecting them to clinical trials of very early autism intervention services, or other supportive services like physical, occupational, and speech therapy that we know can support infant development. Thanks all so much for listening. If you have any questions about this work, don't hesitate to contact me. My email is shown there. Thanks.